speaking of that game as a whole last night, now Roosters 38, Knights 4, Gordy, and the Knights have only won 3 games all year, and a couple of times they've been absolutely pumped like they were last night. What's going on there? I mean, I know they've had their fair share of injuries
they've got injuries as well,
Yeah.
and then their roster's not as deep as some of the other clubs. They played the Titans here. I can only talk about that. They were way down on troops, and there was a death to one of their SG ball players. So they were knocked around a bit about three weeks ago. For me, they're not laying the platform. I think they're struggling for a leader, Newcastle, and they got Clemmer and Frizzell and those guys there, but no one's leading them, when the chips are down. And, as soon as Mitchell Pearce goes, like last year when Mitchell Pearce played good, I think he got 5 or 6 man of the matches, or it might have been the year before, they were winning, they were on a streak. And if Carlin Ponga or Mitchell Pearce don't play good, it seems to be that the whole organisation doesn't go good. And that's danger signs, and I don't know where Newcastle go. Nathan Brown was a problem, and they thought they'd get Adam O'Brien. That's come out of a great system. He come out of the Melbourne and Roosters system, but I haven't watched that club improve.
All right, boys, let me just play you some audio of Coach Adam O'Brien from the Newcastle Knights talking about whether or not the Knights need to make some positional and staff changes.
It's bigger than that. We need to find why. We're not the team that we were last year. Even though we had injuries last year, we've had them again this year. But we were excited by our footy. So there'll be some stuff for me lying in and around that too. So we'll have a conversation about it tomorrow and see if we can find some solutions to get excited about this season, because it's not gone yet, but we need to start making some decisions on what we want to get out of it.
Okay, boys, do you think, Hoops, let me start with you. Do you hear, is Adam O'Brien under any pressure?
No, he's not under any pressure, Anthony. I think he only re-signed. He got a contract extension over the course of the off-season because he was being repeatedly linked with the Melbourne Storm, where he spent 10 years as an assistant to Craig Bellamy. And we now know that Craig will be the head coach at the Melbourne Storm again next year in 2022. But at that stage, Adam was being suggested as a possible replacement. So, no, he's not under any pressure. But there's no doubt, to Gordy's point from a minute ago, there are some cracks there. And I don't have the answers, but Gordon's right. It seems to be that unless Kalen and Mitchell Pearce are on song and firing, then, Tyson Frizzell was brought to the club to stiffen up the forward pack. It was David Clemmer prior to that. Jaden Brayley's a good young hooker. So it seems as though everything's in place, and they had success last year because they made the finals for the first time in a number of seasons, but it's not happening this year.
The thing is, and I think this is what Adam O'Brien was talking about last night, they can't handle any adversity at the moment, the Knights. As soon as a team starts to roll through them a little bit, there's nobody in the side at the moment who says, come on, boys, let's just stiffen up our defence a little bit and gets a little bit of mongrel and goes back at the opposition. They become very submissive in the way they play the game. They just allow the game to come to them. And all this is stuff that should be innate in professional footballers. But the Knights are trying to find it. That when they've got players like Mitchell Pearce there who can actually articulate it and talk and says the right things and can bond the team together on the field, they go okay. But there's no resiliency in their defence whatsoever. So once you start to get a bit of a roll, it's almost like they've got this passive defence that just allows the teams to keep coming at them, and they just start retreating up the field as the defence comes forward, as the attack comes forward, and there's nobody in the team saying, look, we need to turn this around.
That's David Clemmer's job. That's David Clemmer and Tyson Frizzell's job. It's simple as that. They've both played at the highest level. And then you get a rare kid that'll come along and set a standard, like a young Tino or whatever, and you get the young Sam Burgess when they go to South. There's some special young kids that come along and they set a standard. But most of the time, Paul, when I played, and for the life of me, it's your front rows, it's your senior guys, it's your hard-headed guys that are no-nonsense.
Yeah.
And when you look at the night side and you're reading through, they're the two guys that I'd be looking for. Even if I was playing and I'm going to lead, I'd be looking for those two guys to be right beside me, or if not in front of me a little bit.
Yeah. And do you think they're providing that?
No. And that's what we're looking at. So when the chips are down and all those young kids, and that's what Brisbane and the Cowboys and the Dogs, they're looking for that old guy that's just got no nonsense, that does his job week in, week out, that sets a standard that you guys get embarrassed if you don't go with him. And there's no one at Newcastle embarrassing their teammates beside them and saying, you got to come with me. I'm going to go this hard and go that way, and you guys are going to come with me. And that's what they're lacking.
Yeah, the Knights to me are a team who are too busy enjoying the spoils of being an NRL player in a one-team town.
Yes.
And aren't really willing to, like the Broncos have been in the past couple of years. They went around and they got the free entry into the nightclubs and they got all the pats on the back and all the people wanting the selfies and all that. And they're living on the fat of the people who have been there before, got the job done before, but they're not doing it themselves. And they don't seem prepared to sacrifice to get there. They seem quite content the fact that they're playing NRL. They don't want to win at NRL because they're happy playing NRL. And that's the mentality at Newcastle at the moment, and which Newcastle was always the opposite. They were a team, they fought for every bone. That's what, the toughness and tomorrows. That's what Newcastle was always about.
No matter where they were, you'd go to Newcastle. It was a beat-up.
Yep.
You had to check yourself in. I don't care where they were on the table. You'd go to Newcastle without the Johns boys. You'd go there, and you knew you were in a battle.
Yeah, and
I'd love to challenge anybody that's gone to Newcastle. Go, hey guys, you have to check yourself in today.
Trent Robinson actually acknowledged that last night after the game. He said that he spoke to his players about honouring the fact that they're going to a rugby league town where people know what good footballers look like, and where you've got to put in a good performance to get the result. So he drilled that into his team, paying respect to Newcastle and what Newcastle have done in in the history of the club. And yet the Newcastle players themselves were the ones that couldn't live up to it.
Hey, Paul,
Genius
and this whole
reverse
thing about,
psychology
I might
from
save it for the BS. I'm going to save that to the BS.
Hoops.
I was just saying, to Kenny's point there, it's genius reverse psychology from Robbo to tap into the fact that Newcastle's a blue-collar town. It's been born and raised on rugby league, and they know their football. And so he's used that as a motivation to get his side, who were depleted, down on troops, had every reason not to show up. Last night, they got an 18-year-old halfback who's completely kicked the door off the hinges. I think he had 5 try assists.
4. And a try.
I just checked the numbers. I think it was 5.
Yeah,
Because he set the last one up for Josh Morris too.
High five.
So yeah, what a special talent he looks. But yeah, there's some problems there at the Knights at the moment. You can see it from an outside point of view. I don't know exactly what they are, but certainly you look at that roster. There's representative players all throughout that side, and some of the best emerging young talent in the game, i.e. Bradman Best in the Senators, who I thought the Roosters did a terrific job of containing last night.
They're learning bad habits already.
Well, how do you fix that?
Well, you've got to put it on the senior players. The senior players should be the one thing senior players should be teaching the young kids is the standards you've got to reach every week to play in the NRL, and the fact that firstly you just never quit, you never surrender, and the Knights aren't doing that. So these kids are. The worst thing that can happen to a young footballer coming through is to get comfortable with losing, because generally when they're coming through young, it's because they're high achievers, they've had successful junior careers, and if they come into a bad organisation where the senior players are far too comfortable with losing, then what ends up happening is the players sort of just rubs
becomes
off
the
on.
norm.
Yeah, it becomes acceptable
behaviour.
And once it becomes acceptable, then that's difficult, because then you've got to try and change it. So Adam O'Brien's got this job now where he's going to go and say, you know what, we need to turn some things over here, because we don't want Bradman Best learning bad habits of senior players who are, as I said, happy just to be NRL players, happy to be the big dog in the town.
I played with Andrew G, right? And he never won anything. But at training, he'd come last. He and Petro would come last. And you get into a game, and it's tough, and the tougher the game, he would tell you to get out of the road. And when the other sides, like they're barring up and they're coming and they're charging at you and they're hitting you with everything, he'd tell you to get out of the road. So I'm tougher than you, I'm going to take this run. So that was the standard that was set from Andrew G. That when and he wasn't making all the rep sides, and there was Shane Webke and Lazarus and Petro and Thorne and all these guys, but he would be the one to say, I'm taking this hit up. So everybody was fighting to take that tough run. And that's the standard you set. That's what you want from your guys. That's what you want from your leader. And Andrew G, he never won anything at trainer, but he touched every line. A bit like the old Muhammad Ali. How many sit-ups you do? I don't know. I only started counting when it hurts. And that's what it is in a game, when it's hurting and you need to be tough and you need to be brave, that's when those senior guys lead the way. And it might be an action like that. It might be a hit up. It might be a tackle. It might even be giving away a penalty and taking on the bully. But, they're the things that our game's lacking at the moment.
And it's lacking not just Newcastle, it's lacking quite a few teams. The Tigers are exactly the same.
The bottom eight. Mate, the bottom 8 sides are lacking that, Paul.